Hopefully everything's okay. Welcome to the Rudgwick Brickworks. Now you might be wondering what I'm doing outside of Brickworks. Now perhaps fortunately it's shut, so if I was actually looking for a brick, well, I've actually got another one in here in its place, the Ultrafly. Now you might be thinking, Tim, well, that's crazy, Tim. Surely this is the new Vaporfly for the trails. It's had podium places in the Western States 100-mile race and stuff like that, and it seems to be sort of like the most hyped shoe of the year, at least on the trails. Well, the problem is for me, this is actually 370 grams, or in old money 13 ounces. Now how many of you have got any shoes which are that heavy, and if you have, how many of them do you actually want to race in? As a comparison, my Vaporfly 3s here are only 255 grams. Now what does Sue think about this shoe? That's the telltale sign, isn't it? So Sue here's got my new pair of Ultraflies. What do you think of them, Sue?
I want some clarity on this. These are these new white shoes that you're going to wear when it stops raining, is that right?
Well, they're meant to be for hot trails, but unfortunately, of course, in the UK, we don't have too many days when it's like really dry. And it's usually like chucking it down to rain and muddy and all sorts of stuff like that.
Exactly. So is that why this company only make them in white? Is this Nike?
Yeah.
Well, they're on to a winner, aren't they? Because if you only make those in white, they're going to be the state of the road when you've been out about 5 minutes.
Well, there is that. What do you think of them compared to the Vaporflies?
Well, can I just say, I found both of them on the sofa, which I don't find very acceptable for either pair of shoes, to be completely frank. I think they both want to be outside. These feel incredibly heavy. Are they meant to be heavy?
They're meant to be trail racing shoes for 100 miles, like Stephen Cousins type races.
Except that you're not Stephen Cousins, are you? You're Tim Gross, and you like doing shorter distances and doing them very fast.
Yeah, they're meant to be for like doing about 10-minute miles up mountains, I think.
Yeah, I think you'll be 10 minutes to them and you'll have had enough, because they feel heavy, and you will prefer these. That's my prediction.
So I thought I'd better actually show you the Ultrafly. So here it is. And have you ever seen a shoe as wide as that at the front, especially in a Nike shoe? I think everyone who's got a wide feet will be rejoicing at the sight of that. Anyone who's got a narrow feet like me, well, thinking maybe I need to cut the shoe in half and it might actually fit me better. So on the face of it, this is like a classic Vaporfly 1 setup. You've got the Vaporweave upper, which is my favourite upper. It really hugs the foot well. And of course it's got the ZoomX, and of course it's got a carbon plate. They call it a fly plate in this one. But that's about where the similarity ends, really. You've got this mid-foot band here, a bit like on the Pegasus 40, which actually works reasonably well, but it's just the problem is that it's so wide in the first place, so I'm having to get my tongues almost touching there, which is not ideal. The laces are not too bad. They're not the sort of like the ridgy ones that you find on the Vaporflies, so more standard laces. The tongue is pretty minimal, I'd say. It's not like uncomfortably minimal, and it's actually gusseted for the gusseted tongue fans, so that's one plus point, I suppose. The insole is glued in, and let's look at the side. And I haven't actually cleaned this shoe. I've done 2 runs in it, a total of just over 10 miles. I'm not going to lie that I've actually run an ultra in it, as some of my followers said I perhaps should have done. I kind of feel like if you run a couple of 5 milers, mostly off road, and you don't feel that a particularly enjoyable experience, you're not really going to then set off to run an ultra in them, are you? But I think the interesting thing with the ZoomX here is that it's actually been encased in some material. I think that's obviously to protect it on the trails when you're likely to get more damage to it. Although having said that, I've used my Vaporflies on sort of light trails like I was on today, and it was fine. The Vibramount sole, I think there's been a lot of fanfare about that because people claim that they were always like falling over or whatever in Nike outsoles. I must say that I never had any particular problem. I think the problem today I found is that on the typical British trail, when it's a bit muddy, even in July, then yeah, when you went through the muddy patch, it was not like going through a muddy patch in, say, cross-country spikes. You were still sliding a bit, not too bad, I suppose, but I didn't really feel that this was offering me anything sort of wonderfully exciting. It's quite thin, I suppose, if you look there. I mean, there's hardly any much to it at all. So I thought, well, maybe it's the outsole that's causing the weight. No, I don't think it is. I think it's just basically the fact it's just so wide. I mean, just so much more material. It's actually quite sort of rugged at the back there. It's not, and it's quite padded on the heel counter as well. So probably that's just for extra comfort. But this Vaporweave, I didn't find it, even I just did 2 5-mile runs, not actually that breathable. I normally don't really worry about breathable shoes, and I always wear thin socks anyway. Maybe that's why I need to wear thicker socks for these type of shoes. But after like 2 40-minute runs, I was thinking I was in a way, quite glad to get them off. Maybe that's because had to get them so tight across here that I'm not actually seeing this shoe in its full light, which I think is a bit of a problem. They've designed this for a foot which clearly isn't my foot. In a smaller size, this would probably be fine, and you're wondering what I'm on about, but I can only tell it how it is for me because I'm the person wearing it on my feet, obviously. Now, you might also be thinking, well, how actually was it to feel like to run in? Well, other than being really wide, it just actually felt more like an Invincible than it did actually a Vaporfly. I think it actually feels quite soft, and definitely softer than the Zagama, which was perhaps even more of a brick than this one, although that was at least a bit cheaper. So yeah, I think more of an Invincible with a rugged outsole than a Vaporfly with a rugged outsole. Didn't really feel the plate too much, although perhaps a bit more today on that second run than I did on the first one. And it was kind of interesting. I averaged about 8-minute miles there. And I'll go into further details of how that actually compares with what the elites do in these 100-mile races, which you kind of think is what they designed it for.
So I think we need to step back a bit and actually examine what we actually mean by a trail racing shoe. Well, the Western States race is a 100-mile race that starts high in the mountains. I think this year they even had some snow and sort of basically gradually drops. But obviously there's lots of mountains along the way. But it's considered to be a race, from what I understand, that is actually quite runnable. So I think for that sort of race, a shoe like this is ideal. But if you actually look at this year's winner, Tom Evans from the UK, interestingly, an Adidas athlete, not a Nike athlete, he actually won the race in 14 hours 40, which average pace is only just inside 9-minute miles. Now, if you account for the fact that it's really hilly and the gap pace seems to be an average of 8-minute miles, but even some miles he was down to a maximum fast running of 7-minute miles. Now, to me, a racing shoe is something I might take to a 10k, and even my measly old 56-year-old legs could still manage near a 6-minute mile. So here's one of the best runners in the world who's actually racing in a shoe that is only good for at best 7-minute miles. And then you've got to consider that the two athletes that he beat were wearing the Ultrafly, the Nike athletes. Tyler Green is one of them, and he was basically half an hour slow. So, and then I also looked at the top 20, and those people are already running 10-minute miles on average. So even allowing for the gap pace, you're talking about like a long day out and a shoe that's basically not the sort of racing that perhaps most of us would actually do. Now, is that a bad thing? Well, no, but I think you've got to remember what actually is a shoe like this for. And if you want to take it out for, say, a 10k that's got a bit of trail in it, or want to do trail intervals, well, this may be great, but it's not going to be great for me because it's so heavy. Maybe in a smaller size it's fine. Anyway, so I thought I'd just sort of like take it out for a little run today. It's a bit wet. That's another factor as well. I mean, Western States is, although it started the snow, is a really hilly, hot race, and on these dry trails. In the UK in July, it's been raining all day, and sure enough, there's going to be a bit of mud on hills, as Ben Lotley would jokingly say. So is a shoe like this any good? It's a white shoe for a start, and it's got the Vibram outsole, which is fantastic, but I've found so far on my run so far that I've still managed to slip a bit in the mud. So let's take in a little run and see how we feel. So here we are on my run, a nice little bit of trail here. It's fairly dry actually, after this rain today we've had. It's been so dry in the UK recently, but I think it's just sort of an example of, I feel like I'm going out for just a little easy run in a pair of quite sort of clumpy, heavy shoes, which are meant to be £230 state-of-the-art racing shoes. And you're kind of thinking, where's the mismatch between that sort of marketing and what I'm actually feeling under my feet? And why would I need to spend that much money just to go along for a bimble? I mean, if I tried to pick up the pace, yeah, I'm sure I could, but why are these so heavy? Just doesn't make any sense to me. I suppose the other thing is, how would I feel after not just 1 mile, but after 20 miles, 30 miles? My longest ever run is 55k, so I'm not a total ultra novice, I suppose. Never done an ultra race, but I've actually gone farther than a marathon a few times. Admittedly, that was on the road. But again, for my longest run ever, I wore the endorphin speed. So again, why would I really want to use a shoe like this? So we're on quite a gravelly section now. I must say that these do feel comfortable, not quite as soft as you might think and say an Invincible, although it does sort of liken them to more like an Invincible with a bit of grip than a Vaporfly with a bit of grip. Again, I just can't get over the weight because you just don't feel like a shoe that I would associate with racing. If your idea of a race is a 100-mile race, and I think it's a totally different mindset for sure. So I think you just got to bear that in mind. Oh, see how the traction is on this tree. Yeah, success through there, but basically I was at walking pace, tiptoeing over that tree, so I'm not sure what that really says. Now I've got a bit of mud, a bit of softness. I must say, when you sort of skate across the side of that mud, the fact that it's so wide, quite disconcerting, because you feel like your foot's going all over the place. So, me personally, I just prefer a really narrow shoe for my narrow feet, stop the feet sliding. Because on a trail, you're kind of thinking, well, at this speed, just show you the front here, I want sort of insurance. And this Vibram, when you go through a little muddy patch like that, you're still sliding around. I mean, unless you were wearing cross-country spikes, which obviously you wouldn't do for a 100-mile race, then not sure what the solution is. So I mean, I've had a bit of road, not too bad on the road, but yeah, I've got plenty of shoes that I would rather be running a road runner than a shoe that is say 100 grams heavier than a Speed, or 120 or 130 heavier than a Vaporfly. So yeah, I mean, grip's fine, but on a surface like this, well, any shoe's gonna be fine, isn't it? Well, it is for me anyway. I just want to show how wide these are for my feet there. The toes at a nice little thumb width there, but yeah, I can lay my thumb flat there, I can lay my thumb flat there. I've got these tied in so much on these peg 40 type bands. I mean, to be honest, the lockdown isn't too bad here, but they're so wide here that I almost feel like I've got to almost cut off the circulation. I'll just show you. So you can see how much lace I've got there, even sort of like loose. That's about the tension when they're sort of like just normal. And for me, I have to basically pretty much have the tongues touching, and then it just about then does have a good lockdown there, to be fair, but yeah, just so wide at the top. Yeah, I mean, thumb there, it's just like a shoe that's not designed for me, basically. I think it's designed for people with 4E feet. So perhaps more for me again, £230 on a shoe that clearly doesn't suit me. You can kind of see why I don't get shoes now, because size 13 with narrow feet, clearly nobody designs a shoe for me. But it just like goes to show that sometimes the best shoes aren't necessarily the ones that are the best shoes for you. So I'm sure for somebody this is good. I mean, the second and third place in the Western States, kudos to those athletes. They're far better than I could ever have been, especially over those distances. But yeah, I just kind of think, well, I just can't see the point of this shoe. But if you've got 4E feet and like running 10-minute miles all day, then yeah, this is for you. Apologies if I upset anybody if that applies to, but otherwise, if this is a race shoe, then you need to run an awful long way before it turns into a race. Anyway, hope you find this interesting. Like and subscribe all that, and see you next one then. Bye.
But what I'm less clear about is, why do we also need to have the tape measure?
Well, they're very wide, so I was measuring how wide they were.
Right.
So for my narrow feet, they look like more suited to your type of feet.
Mm. And did you also have the baking cupboard open to access the scales?
370 grams in them,
yeah.
255 in the Vaporflies.
Yeah, so my hunch is right. The reason I say that is because the cupboard to the baking door, the cupboard, is normally closed shut because I don't go into it very often. I wonder why it was open yesterday. Tim, these will be unbelievably filthy. Also, for all of your lovely followers, it is chucking it down like a hooly-dooly out there. Tim dressed here in a questionable pair of shorts. Don't go putting too many of those pictures on. No, don't do that. That's what causes all the problems. Don't go doing that.
Oh. They're orange. I thought that orange matched my shoes.
Can I just say, the colour of those shorts is the least of their problems.
Mm.
I mean, I could say something, but I probably shouldn't say something on the video.
So you don't think those shoes are very suitable then?
Well, I think they're an extraordinary choice for you because they're really heavy, and I can see why, even I can see why people would want to run 100 miles in these. But you're not going to run 100 miles, are you? You're not going to run 10 miles in these today because it's chucking it down like a hooly-dooly. To everyone else, I have suggested that Tim waits until it's dry and then he runs to and from the front door in the dry. No, can't be doing that. No, even though we live in the heart of rural anywhere. No, he's got to go off.
I've got to test them out.
I know, but in the time it takes you to drive from here to where you're going to test them, You'll have missed the window of dryness, and when you come back, I think we should take another little bit of video to just go how dirty and skanky these very rapidly end up being. And also, these arrived earlier in the week, didn't they?
Yeah.
I think they may have a very short life expectancy and very rapidly be being posted off to Steve Way.
He's retired. Anyway.
But I just say, even if Steve Way has retired, there's a decided greater chance that he's going to run 100k in them than there is you.
Well, he's the British record out of 100k on a road, though, not on a trail. That's who said.
Tim, there's about as much chance of you running 100k in those as there is of me running 10k.
Well, I did
5K,
55k
okay.
on my birthday, didn't I? 57k for the next birthday if I do it then. I might have to wait till 60 then.
So we can do hold on to those shoes till then? I don't think so.
Well, maybe not. All right then. Thanks for watching. So we've got the Ultrafly on the left and the Vaporfly 3 on the right. Look how much wider the Ultrafly is at the base here. And if I put my feet on these shoes, you can just see how much spare room I've got. So on the Ultrafly there, it looks like I've got almost the wrong size shoe. It's like voluminous at the front there, huge amount of room around the edge. Whereas on the Vaporfly, it's sort of far more sort of conforming to my actual foot shape. So if we actually measure the width here, at its widest point, I would say that the Ultrafly 13 centimeters wide there, with the Vaporfly 3 at 12 centimeters. Now consider the width of my feet are about 10 centimeters. I've got an awful lot of width to actually hide, haven't I? At the heel there, the width of the Ultrafly is 10 centimeters, where I'd say it's about 8.5 in the Vaporfly 3. And at the middle portion here, the narrowest part, it's about 8 centimeters in the Ultrafly and about 6 in the Vaporfly 3.